Welcome to AI Practice Notes, podcast about the future of legal work and the lawyers who are shaping it. I'm your host, Michael Fahner, practicing attorney and the founder of Socius Legal. When we talk about legal AI, there's often a gap between engineers building the tools and the lawyers who are actually using them. This is something we're keenly focused on here at Socius. And we've always believed that the most impactful legal technology is going to come from practitioners. Our guest today shares that builder-lawyer mindset. Marla Miller is a tax attorney with an LLM from Northwestern and a full spectrum legal background, international tax in DC, Big Four advisory work, and time as outside general counsel for a venture-backed startup company. Today, she's also the chair of the tax section for the Louisiana State Bar. But Marla is here because she's taken that deep domain expertise and turned it into a product. As the founder and CEO of 9 to 5 Legal Docs, she's building attorney-vetted AI designed to handle the heavy lifting of the deal cycle without removing the lawyer's judgment from the equation. She isn't just theorizing about the way AI might change the profession. She's actually architecting tools that are doing it. Today, we're going to dig in on practice versus product, why better workflows aren't enough to fix a broken model, codifying intuition, the architecture of translating legal judgment into responsible AI, and the lawyer in the loop, why the next decade of legal tech belongs to the builders who actually understand the risk. Marla, welcome to AI Practice Notes.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Great to have you. So I would love to start by getting more background on you as an attorney and what led you to the legal profession to begin with.
Oh, I would love to have a great answer for that. I floundered a little bit in undergrad. I started as a pre-med major and then was like, what am I doing? I don't like blood that much, This is right for me. I switched to psychology and I realized I was too analytical. I was analyzing every human I came in contact with. And I took an aptitude test and it was law or business. It was a very in-depth one. And I chose a law degree because I felt like I could do more with it. I don't know that that's correct.
Seems like you're doing a lot, so that's great. What about tax in particular?
I got to law school and I didn't know what kind of law I wanted to do. And our assistant dean was a tax attorney and I took her tax class and something just clicked. It wasn't the numbers because I'm not a CPA or anything like that. It was just the logic problem part of it essentially and figuring out the rules or the parameters and how best to navigate them. That's the best way I know how to explain how my brain works and why it clicked that way. And I feel like tax is at the core of a lot of business decisions, right? Like you at least have to consider it when you're doing transactions or structuring or putting agreements in place, how it will impact you from a tax perspective.
Yeah, I think taking income tax in law school was one of the more eye-opening educational experiences throughout law school for me. It totally changed my perspective on what tax even is. It's how it regulates things.
Yeah.
I often say to non-lawyers in conversation that the smartest lawyers are oftentimes the tax attorneys. So with all due respect to everyone else in the profession, I have a lot of respect for your specialty in particular.
Well, I appreciate that. I think I feel similarly about securities attorneys.
Well, that's great. But who I feel, the most particularly impressed by are those who are building legal AI tools. So that's our topic of conversation today. And for me, when I first used generative AI a couple of years ago, it was mind-blowing experience, however you want to describe it. I immediately felt gripped by it in the sense that it was going to change what we do as attorneys. And I started tinkering and dove in. I'm curious if you had a similar kind of, I don't want to say epiphany moment, but if you had a similar experience, if there was a point where you were like, I need to dig further into this.
Yeah, I started several years ago trying to find a solution for the bottleneck of my practice and disseminate information. And this was pre AI becoming so accessible. And I just put up a website with forms and information. That was the beginning of it. And then as AI became more accessible, I'm like, no, there's better ways to do this, right? And so that's really how I got started into it. But yes, it was very mind-blowing once you get into it. And even the little things that it could automate and do. And used to, you had to prepare all this information or all these forms or all these articles, and here you could feed the AI some of that you've already prepared, and it just produces a very accurate and great summary. So little things like that, you just start to learn, how efficient it can become in the everyday lawyer life, I guess.
Yeah, that resonates with me. I use AI pretty much every day in my practice, and over time, I've kind of come up with my mode of operating and how I use it. And as someone who loves research, likes digging in on things, it's just an amazing tool for its ability to distill things down.
Yes.
But beyond kind of like the individual efficiencies, we're very interested in kind of the systemic efficiencies at law firms and in legal practice generally. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about 9 to 5 Legal Docs and exactly what kind of problems you guys are focusing on, and how there's so many legal tech tools out there, a lot of talk about all this stuff. How do you guys differentiate from the generic AI and some of the other legal AI tools out there?
Yeah, so at 9 to 5, I think I started out wanting to have a drafting tool. And then I was like, no, we need something bigger. And as part of this, I really wanted to help startups. And I feel like there are more startups now with vibe coding, right? And they just lack certain basic information and understanding of legal workflows. And so we developed the AI in the first context just to disseminate information, like try to cross that barrier, and help educate founders based on lawyers training, because generic tools are probabilities, right? I guess you could say. And it's different from when a lawyer trains it based on their expertise, experience, patterns, all the things, right? And so that was the first, I guess, version of our AI. And then 9 to 5, you can get documentation, you can ask AI questions, but once you make a purchase on the back end, you have like an account, and it's more of a systems tool. You can do e-sign. It's the AI is contextual, so it helps educate you through the documentation process, but also it remembers you where you were with your documentation, gives you tips in that sense. And so it's really designed at its core to educate, but then become on the back end more contextual and assistant-like in the process, because there's so many areas, so many small details that can really trip startups up, right, and change the legal risk profile of what they are doing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So if I'm a lawyer out there, wherever listening, how would I get involved with 9 to 5 Legal Docs? Do I sign up? Is there a download, or how does that process work?
Yeah, so our next step is to have lawyers on the platform. So right now it's been in beta testing using me as a lawyer, because our tool on the back end, we want lawyers to be able to edit the documentation for the startups within the platform. So it stays all within the platform, not because we're being selfish. I mean, that would be great if everything was done within 9 to 5, but because the system also populates a corporate record for them and really helps teach them how to do that and how to create a data room. So if a lawyer can go in and really work within the platform on a base that they already have, it really eliminates the risk of leakage, mistakes, all things that happen when there's all these disjointed tools and all these disjointed systems. So any lawyer can reach out to me about being on the platform. And then the next layer will be white labeling to lawyers to utilize in their own practice. So I really believe that, I don't know that all law firms will become AI enabled, but I think so. We'll have to adapt or die, right? And so that's the goal, is really to make AI tools accessible to solo and small firms.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, certainly resonates with me. I use Socius in my practice, and I'm similarly constantly iterating on it, testing it, and kind of being the primary hamster or whatever, guinea pig. But I appreciate that approach. I think there's, like I said, a lot of legal technology companies out there who rush to market and maybe are not as well tested or worked over with practicing attorneys. It's not necessarily about volume, but it's about that kind of constant feedback loop to improve the product. I think the whole profession is in beta when it comes to AI, and we can figure out how we're going to handle this going forward. I mean, there's going to be regulatory changes. There's going to be, obviously, the technology is changing rapidly. So I have more of maybe a long-term vision of that. And I also have been very focused on this idea of like an empty middle, where you have the off-the-shelf tools. Copilot, every lawyer has Microsoft Office, right? It's available. It's really good. It's getting better. And these tech companies keep leapfrogging each other. Maybe Gemini is the top model right now, whatever it might be. That's always on one side. That's always available. And then you have kind of the custom tools and the tools that have been iterated on the way you're talking about. And it's that middle where it's kind of like a skin over ChatGPT or whatever it might be. That's, I think, where legal tech maybe falls off the rails. And I'm most focused on folks like you who are doing that long-term experimentation to build out these more bespoke tools that really dig into what it means to practice as a lawyer. I mean, when I was a law student or before I became a lawyer, I really didn't know what the day-to-day of a lawyer looked like. So it's hard for me to expect someone who's not worked in it to understand it either.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's maybe a really bad analogy, but I analogize these non-lawyer trained, non-lawyer vetted AI tools to kind of like us in law school. We're like, we're trained on the law in theory, but it's not like practicing, right? And we can't make those judgment calls. We don't have that pattern recognition until we've been in the trenches for a while. And I think it's very similar in that, in the gap between the tools, right? And then also non-lawyers building legal tech is tricky to me. It doesn't mean that there can't be a really good tool out there. I know there are, but I think it's different when a lawyer builds, because engineers are like, oh, I can do this, right? Which is cool. Lawyers are like, okay, what do we need? Okay, can we do that? It's kind of in my mind, at least, it's a different thought process and a different vetting process and a different building process. And really, even on our platform, there's two customers, right? We have the attorney and then we have the startup founder. And we can build something a certain way for the startup founder. But I just had we're in this now, figuring this out. My engineer, but lawyers need it like this. And yes, that's more difficult, but we have to do it, right? And so it's figuring out those things. And sometimes it's kind of competing interests. Can we do this quick enough, cheap enough, fast enough this way? But is it going to work, like you said, for the long term for lawyers? And you really have to take the time to figure that out.
Yeah, I think in addition to the quality of the technology or the tools, it's a change management issue on behalf of the lawyers as well. In my experience, lawyers are generally kind of slow to adopt new technology. I think even if you put AI aside, probably most law offices across the country were behind on what a tech company might be using internally when it comes to tools. AI has been maybe a little bit of a kick in the ass for lawyers, right? And now we're digging in and leveraging tech more. But getting people comfortable with it is a huge portion of it, and making it so that they don't really have to. Lawyers tend to be set in their ways, maybe, or maybe everyone tends to be set in their ways, but lawyers are people, so they kind of stick to what they know. And when the tools are designed for them, I think they're more likely to adopt it than when it's kind of like a labeled legal AI tool that's maybe trained on some legal data sets, but isn't as like ergonomic for them.
I agree. Like the goal is for it to fit into their workflow as seamlessly as possible, or maybe change it a little bit, but not totally upend it, right? And I do think some lawyers take an all or nothing approach and are standoffish to AI because they think they have to change everything they've ever known, everything they've ever done, but that actually is not true, if done correctly.
Yeah, one of the criticisms I hear a lot that I think makes lawyers standoffish is, well, if I have to review it anyway, why am I doing this? I don't really buy that argument, but I see it a lot, and I hear it a lot. And as a result of that, I when I'm designing work streams or AI work streams, I like to think about, how do we make the output easier for a lawyer to review? How do we make the output something that the lawyer can check in an efficient way so that they don't feel that? But I'm curious, have you heard that pushback as well? It's facially inaccurate to me, but have you seen people say that?
Yes, I have. And it's review or do this piece of it anyway, or insert whatever clause there. But yes, it's true. And I don't think they realize how much it can speed up processes and help synthesize information that they already have, or prepare first drafts of things, or do these initial things. And what I really realized, so I guess when we went to market, I thought, oh, they will see that this is lawyer trained and come to us instead of going to like Claude or GPT or whatever. And what I found is they really want, instead of like AI on the front end and lawyers being totally on the back end, it's actually AI in the middle. I don't know if you're finding this too with what you're doing, but
break that down.
You need the human lawyer on the front end because they want to ask questions. They want to be reassured. And lawyers, that's where we come in, is because we've seen so much. Well, if you're experienced, you eventually get there. You've seen so much, and you can take what they're telling you and recognize patterns or follow-up questions or things like that, right? It's all judgment, this human judgment. And the founders, the business owners, they actually want that. And I think it's part just human connection with all the AI out there. And then also maybe just reassurance, or, hey, they like to ask, am I not thinking of certain things, right? Things like kind of open-ended questions and problem solving. And then and then that's also where strategy comes in. So then it's like, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to get it done. And then you utilize the AI tools the best you can to accomplish that, or in the, whatever tools will work. And then you come in and do final review strategy and on the back end, right? And then meet with them again. The human interaction is important. Go over what's been done or what needs to be done and so forth. So I really see that AI is in the messy middle more so than it is on the front end, or at least should be, right? And so, we're pivoting. We've had to pivot a little bit because of that.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to frame it, this kind of lawyer AI sandwich. I mean, certainly on the back end, a lawyer should just always be reviewing an AI output. I think that's just an immutable law of legal AI. On the front end, though, even as the AI models get increasingly better, someone still needs to translate the context to the AI. And in so many ways, I feel like the lawyer's job, even without AI, is understanding the context and making an assessment of the situation in that context to provide the appropriate advice. I mean, so often a client will come to me and what they think we're going to discuss is not what we actually need to discuss, right? It's like some other issue is the actual lurking thing, or how to approach it. So when I think about maybe someone who's not a lawyer using AI to solve their legal problems, I worry that they are starting off just in the totally wrong context, or they immediately go down kind of an incorrect lane. Maybe I just tell myself this to give me comfort that like lawyers will always be valuable even as AI gets incredibly powerful. But I think you do need kind of a curator of that content, certainly today.
Yeah, I think this is true. I mean, if you think of it even like a teacher, right? Like you can learn a lot from these programs, but a teacher has context, a teacher has explanation, a teacher can give you examples, and that's just on the teacher's educational front. But the lawyer brings the experience too, right? And like you said, like I have clients that come to me and they're like, okay, we're going to do this transaction to accomplish X, whatever X is. And I'm like, but have you thought about Y and Z, and like, yeah, we can get there, but it's going to cost you this, right? And right now I'm thinking of a tax situation, but it could apply to anything because they don't understand how one thing changes the other. And it's not faulting anyone. It's just they haven't been trained on it and they haven't seen it. And that's been our role, right? And that's where we can really continue to add value.
Yeah, I noticed that very recently. I had an experience with kind of a client who was using AI to maybe review my work or to review the contract we were working on. And the AI got it wrong because it was unable to connect the dots between an earlier provision and the indemnity clause. And sometimes, AI at this stage of the game gets lost in the sauce a lot, right? The context window for a human lawyer is just bigger right now, or at least more capable in this respect. I don't know about how many tokens a human processes, but we still need to kind of be there to guide it. So you run into those issues, but I've increasingly seen AI drafted contracts coming from my lawyer, from my clients rather, AI drafted questions. I had a call right before this where someone was clearly reading like the AI generated what you should ask your lawyer about this issue. I view this as a good thing, actually. I think in a more educated client is a good thing, and I'm ready to answer those questions. But I'm curious if you're seeing that kind of as well.
Yes, definitely. I mean, a couple of years ago, it was more basic. Like a client would send me something that they developed with ChatGPT. Oh, look at this equity incentive program that or package, this whole thing. And it had like stock in there and all this in there in LLC. I mean, it's just things like that. And with 9to5, what I'm seeing is they are still utilizing some of these other programs to make sure we're not missing anything, right? And then when we do consultations and go over it, it is very much like they have something that they want in the contract, and the AI is like, this is how you get it. This is a provision. And then my job is to say why we don't put that in the other stage, right? Yep. And so, yeah, AI will do what you want it to do. We'll give you the provisions that you want it to give you, but you don't understand why that's actually bad for you, or why it can harm you in 6 months, a year down the road. So, yeah. A lot of that.
No, the AI's desire to please can oftentimes, as lawyers, sometimes we have to say no, or maybe we're a little bit of an impediment to what our client is trying to do. That's part of the job. The AI is not really fulfilling that function in the same way, and can be very direct. I've definitely seen provisions that's kind of straight up saying what the client must have requested it to.
Yeah, exactly.
On the flip side of that, I also see often, especially like maybe like the miscellaneous section of a contract where maybe the AI is running out of tokens or something, and it'll just have kind of like one sentence like governing law, or it'll be like, electronic signatures are permitted under this agreement or something, instead of kind of like our boilerplate that we would include. And I do wonder if there's maybe a certain beauty to that long term, where maybe we can start to cut down on legalese to these extremely concise sentences. But I don't think we're quite there yet. I don't think the law's maybe caught up with what the future of written word might look like in that regard.
Yeah, I don't know that I've thought about it in that way, but I do think there are ways where we can cut down a lot, right? And it used to be like this competition of like, look how much I can do for you. Look at this beautiful contract. Look at this super complicated LLC operating agreement.
Totally.
Right? And they would pay for that because, oh, wow, that must be amazing. And now it's like, wait, we can get this done in so many less words and so much less competition, so much less construction. But I guess the other side of that is you have to have two people that are willing to do that. If you still have an attorney or a party on the other side that wants all of this, legalese because it makes them feel more secure, then how do you cut down on it on your side? So
totally.
I think it would be great to go towards that, but yeah, we have a ways to go, I think.
Yeah, and there's a good chance it ends up going totally the other way too, because it's so much easier to generate text. So it's kind of like, well, why not just generate a huge provision? Because on the other side, we're just gonna have the AI read the output, so we don't really need to go through it ourselves. I mean, maybe this is the future. Certainly, to be clear, like no practicing attorney should be relying solely on the AI kind of reviewing or writing this stuff now. But long term, I could see a world where the AI takes maybe more of a lead role in the drafting if it becomes materially better in certain respects. But that judgment and context we talked about is always going to, I think, require a human.
Yeah, agreed. I very much agree. We don't know we don't know,
Yeah, it's kind of the beauty of it in some
Yeah.
ways. It's all, it's also a reason why, I love the builder lawyer attitude you have, because like I said earlier, it's like the whole thing is in beta, right? We don't know where the profession's going. I think it's just incumbent upon us as lawyers to pay attention right now and see what happens. For a lot of lawyers, the product is changing. What you saw.
Yeah. And I think it's changing so fast, right? Like for 9 to 5, I would think that we were doing one thing, and then I was like, nope, we need to do this thing. And so when we really launched the platform, I just designed it for flexibility, because what we think is this amazing tool right now may not be so amazing in 6 months or even shorter, right? And it's moving so rapidly now that it's hard to keep up. And so it's really designed such that we can either build the tool or we can partner with other AI legal tech companies. And I think that's really important, the flexibility, because we don't know where things are going.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that partnership model, I think, makes good sense too, because there's so many people experimenting and different tools are going to emerge for different things. And that's why we're having this conversation, right? Like we're both building legal AI tools, but I don't, we're all kind of in this together to a certain extent, to try to figure out what the law looks like going forward.
Yeah.
Legal practice, at least. One thing that surprised me about like other lawyers when I started building legal tech and like talking with them and learning their needs was how different lawyers practice and how different institutions are within the law. Is that something that you feel has been noticeable to you, or because of your kind of diverse background across the legal industry, did you feel like you were already prepared for that?
Yeah, I don't think it's been surprising. And I think maybe because I've been in so many different roles. I mean, I've been in Big Four, in-house multinationals. I've worked for a really small firm that was not on the cloud. There's just a big spectrum of things. And I think, so yeah, that's not really surprising to me at all. But I do think that also goes to the flexibility of what you're building, right? And how we need to build it such that it fits different workflows, or pieces of it would fit different workflows as much as possible. We're never going to get it completely right. And then lawyers, like you said, maybe don't love change all the time. Very not technologically advanced historically. And we're being forced to with AI, but it's some more experienced lawyers, older generations, maybe may not adopt AI and maybe retire before they do, so we just have to, and then the ones coming out of law school, they won't know a legal world, which is crazy to me, without AI, right? So we have very different sides of the spectrum we have to consider.
Yeah, I thought kind of in the post-COVID era, things really changed the way we work with Zoom. Like conference calls were kind of now Zoom calls, and like just the dynamics shifted a lot. But with AI, I could only imagine how different the perspective of a junior associate or a first-year associate at a firm must be and will be for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
Do you think at all about how your tools or any AI tools will impact kind of the development and training of these lawyers? A lot of people, I think, worry about that.
Yeah. So our platform is built to disseminate information and to help people with forms and to remove barriers to access to legal in whatever ways it can. And so right now we're partnering with our first accelerator, and we're building that out, and it's based on that. And I think that we could go to like law firm small business clinics, right? Or entrepreneurship clinics, or whatever the law firm calls it. And really try to help not only just provide access, but train the law students as well on best practices and giving them some technology that they could utilize. And we get feedback from that, right? It helps us improve too. And I think it's really important. I think AI, when it's doing its best, can bridge that gap and really leverage the knowledge experience of the, well, I don't want to say older, more experienced attorneys and the less experienced attorneys, and help both. And
Yeah. I think that makes that. I think that's right. Like there's obviously the existential risk maybe to the new lawyer who would normally do the kind of quote unquote grunt work, and AI kind of, takes that role over. But I think a self-starter who's graduating law school right now has an amazing opportunity to do research with AI and learn and dig in on a concept and say, hey, go pull me everything on the internet about this. And, in some ways you might be able to accelerate your career more than ever. Although I think it requires like quite a bit of gumption and effort to do that.
Yeah. I actually thought about that before this podcast, even how in coming out of law school, when we're younger, we tend to sometimes be dismissive of old ways of doing things and like, no, there's this more efficient way, I mean, I'm guilty of that just living. But if they can find a way to make themselves more valuable because of the tech and because of their knowledge and the use of it, and then really helping bridge that gap for more experienced lawyers and leveraging the more experienced lawyers' strategy, knowledge, pattern recognition, all the things, I agree. I think they have a real opportunity to do that.
Yeah. At the same time, I like, pattern recognition in particular, kind of the repetitive nature of going or iterating over the same contract and reworking it. I do think it builds up your eye in a way that maybe like raw research and knowledge doesn't do. But like as a lawyer, you kind of, I don't know how to totally describe it, but over the course of my career, I suddenly look at pieces of paper differently. And I wonder how that might change in kind of like an AI powered review world, but maybe that's for the better.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of had to learn in the wild, like working for other people and really absorbing what they were doing and why they were doing it that way and all of those sorts of things. I think maybe AI has the ability to pick up those patterns and even teach those patterns in a different way.
Yeah. At the same time, when we talk about kind of why they're doing something, I do worry that data sets at a lot of law firms don't necessarily capture that. They will oftentimes capture kind of the negotiated outcome of a deal or will, kind of the compromise at the end. And even if you have multiple versions, that context, the client's risk profile or this particular event that was occurring that, or this meeting that, had someone antsy and resulted in X, that's kind of like institutional knowledge that has historically, I think, been passed down in like the mentorship, a master apprentice kind of model that I think a lot of lawyers kind of have been part of. Do you think that that's something we should be worried about as we kind of build AI systems, maybe relying on the databases in our law firms too much?
I think yes, especially if those databases, data sets are, like you said, right? If I think it's going to require lawyers, law firms to really take it a step further and identify why those decisions were made. And really, you can do it in decision tree or some sort of other way, mapping it out, right? Like, oh, it was this reasoning, this reasoning. I mean, I don't think everything can be deduced down to AI. There is human judgment in there, right? But it can start to pick up these patterns as to why things were done. And I do think it's possible with drafting, even with tax, right? Because we have these like flags or these things, oh, if we're doing this, we need to look at X, Y, and Z and make sure, and triple check and do this. And I think those are all patterns that, but yes, I think it's going to require them to take a step further. But I think that's why there's like law firms like yours and these AI enabled firms that hot or AI native that are hot right now. They're doing it in a different way. And you really have to go that extra step. But then on what they're, yes, it requires that extra effort. And it also, the recognition that there's value in that outside of the billable hour, right? To help in the long term. And there's still a lot of firms that don't recognize that and acknowledge it as how we're going to have to.
Yeah, reconceptualize value, or maybe look at value with a new perspective. And you mentioned kind of some of these AI native firms. I too have seen the big trend with a lot of venture firms backing these kind of AI native law firms or AI powered law firms. Curious to get your perspective on kind of that model versus maybe a more traditional firm that's just leveraging AI, and also on the idea of like a venture-backed law firm. I think that the nature of how a law firm might grow and develop client relationships might be at odds with that.
Yeah, I think so too. And you may have better insights than I do, really, but I think it's a lot to unpack, actually. Should lawyers be raising capital and focused on returns when they are supposed to be providing legal services and counselor and advocate for their clients? I don't know that those two things align necessarily. And I do think that it is cool to see it be, a law firm built with AI, but does it have to be venture backed to do it? No. Are there barriers to access to AI for solo and small firms? Yes, at this current time. Do I think they'll always be there? No. And I do think that, like I said, there are some lawyers that will just be like, no, I'm not doing it. I mean, I've talked to some today and they're like, no, I'm just too old. I don't care. I'll be out before I have to deal with it, right? But then the rest of us will have to adapt. And how much more value are they providing by building from scratch AI native, VC backed, as opposed to like putting the AI in the messy middle and really providing that extra value to clients? And I don't know that we can put that into data sets, right? But
I have similar feelings about it. I mean, I'm sure there is a market for these kind of AI, AI VC backed, bang out NDAs kind of services. Like, there's definitely a sector of the economy that will benefit from that. But I fundamentally think that if you take a good, experienced, quality attorney and just give them access to something like 9 to 5, they probably will perform better than they did because now they have these better tools. And I don't know if you need to kind of do the whole like native from the ground up stack at this point.
Right. Yeah, because if you're doing from native from the stack, what is the AI learning from? Maybe it's lawyers that are bringing stuff into the firm, so maybe it's not fresh. But I've seen some where if the lawyers have any experience, it's not much. And so really, what are they drawing upon when they're building these tools? I'm not saying it won't, like you, that they're not going to provide a value in a certain case, but I think we all have the ability to become AI enabled as these AI tools become better and more accessible.
Yeah, I also I've certainly been exploring flat rate services and that kind of stuff more, but there's always something more, right? I need to do this formation. Oh, but also like my brother-in-law signed a note and I got to deal with that. Or there's like always some extra thing that, AI can certainly help with, but as it stands today, you kind of need the lawyer to exercise their judgment on it. So I think my point there is I don't know if the technology is efficient enough yet to fundamentally change the firm structure, although it is certainly more efficient than maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I've seen that with 9 to 5 with me as the guinea pig. I'm like, okay, well, we have these documents. We're going to do a consult. Yeah, I would tailor these a little bit more customize these a little bit more specific to fit your fact pattern. But then there's always follow-up question, right? And so it's, even as a platform, we are shifting more to packages that involve lawyers in the process, because it inevitably happens. right? There's always facts or follow-up questions or follow-up questions. Always.
No, absolutely. And also, if you're a founder starting a company, or or CEO or whatever, even if you can do some of this work with AI, it's probably better to have someone dedicated to the legal function, or someone who's kind of filtering the stuff so that you're not spending your time on that legal question. So I think that lawyers are here to stay for a while, which is I think a good thing for us. And I think that maybe there will be a time when the technology is dramatically better in a way that we all like. The way we all do this is dramatically different, and we are maybe from the ground up AI native. But I think right now we're seeing just efficiency gains on the individual level, certainly with whatever off the shelf tools. And I think more and more folks like you and I are thinking about how you might design a system that's creating more efficiencies in the whole work stream.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, this is going to change. I mean, I'm sure you've seen. I mean, I know you've seen the dramatic changes over the last year in AI. It's exciting, right? Like, things you can now ask it to do makes your life a lot easier.
Right. Yeah. And that's just the past year. And so it's compounding effects, right? So it's just going to get that much better.
Yeah. Are you guys at 9 to 5 generally model agnostic, or do you focus on a particular kind of stack?
We're more Anthropic focused, but we do have multi model built in to the system.
I kind of like started with Anthropic. I feel like they have like a special place in maybe my heart. I feel like Claude was kind of like really kickstarted my use of AI, especially in the legal context. But so I we'll see kind of where this race goes amongst all of them too. I mean, it's going to be. I suspect we will have years of this one leapfrogging this one, and it will just keep getting better and better over time as they kind of compete. For the folks who are listening and have heard all this and are interested in using 9 to 5, can you tell us maybe where to find you guys?
Yeah, so our website is 9to5docs.com. We're on almost all social media. And then my personal social media is Marla Calvert Miller on LinkedIn, and then the lawyer Marla on TikTok and Instagram. So.
All right, excellent. Well, everyone be sure to follow those accounts or otherwise visit. And if you're a lawyer who's not using AI, which I think is probably the minority at this point, you should definitely get on it. Maybe that's a good place to start.